Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Enjoy Your DUI. In 2014, a former friend of mine started a new relationship with a man 20 plus years younger than her. One night, she and he got very drunk and insisted that I was as well, even though I wasn't even drinking. They took my car keys and phone and would not give them back. I walked down a block to a Mexican restaurant and one of the people there was kind enough to let me use her phone to call the police. The police did nothing, so when I returned and demanded my phone and car keys, the police arrested me for disturbing the peace. The charges were later dropped, as you can imagine, after I filed a complaint about the officers who wouldn't retrieve my stolen items. They both blocked me on social media not long after, but, as a strategist, I had already hatched a plan. Using my social media account under a false name, I keep watch on her and him. They aren't wise enough to realize anyone can see their public posts. I see that they buy new trucks and move. I keep tabs on their every move weekly. Fast forward to St. Patrick's Day, 2019, when I know they will be drunk. Drunks are predictable all day. I rent a car, load a suction hydraulic fluid pump filled with brake fluid into it, and park it behind a multiplex theater. I return home via the anonymity provided by public transit, and drive my own car to the theater and park as close as possible to the cameras. My spouse is working and I tell him I'm going out to the movies. I buy a ticket to Aquaman, knowing that with previews, it will run well over 3 hours. I leave my coat and phone at the theater and I head out to a bar I've seen her post publicly about on social media. I spot the truck and I use my pre-filled hydraulic pump to inject a half quart of brake fluid into the exhaust pipe of their new truck, which I'm sure they had no idea I knew about. I park in the back of the parking lot and, knowing that they will be going to another bar in the next half hour, take watch. When they return to the truck, I make a call to 911 from an old phone without cell service, letting them know I spotted a drunk driver in a white Silverado with a smoking exhaust and gave them the plate number. I follow them from a distance on the freeway and eventually see them stopped by the highway patrol after almost reaching their next destination. With an evil, shit-eating grin on my face, I drive the rental car back to the theater, show them my ticket stub, explaining that I had to take a call in the mall foyer. Aquaman wraps up, I collect my phone and drive my own car home. Needless to say, I later hear from other common friends that he got a DUI, couldn't make bail for 3 days and lost his job. Somehow, they're still together, and I'm sure they have no idea whatsoever that I've already got my revenge. The rental car, movie and phone left in the theater seat weren't really ever needed, but it was cheap insurance having an alibi if anyone asked. Still have never seen Aquaman. The next one is titled, Snipe My Parking Spot? Fine. This happened over a decade ago. I was running errands with my grandmother, and, due to her declining health, I was driving. We got to the post office in a strip mall so she could get a book of stamps, and had been patiently waiting for an end spot that was just about to open up. Watched the person get into the car and settle in. I turned on my blinker, signaled my intent and waited patiently. While waiting, I scanned the scenery and watched the other vehicle in question enter the driveway 2 large shops down and heeded no mind to them. Meanwhile, the person finished backing out, but did so in such a way that we were blocked off from accessing it rapidly. But as soon as they cleared the area, I swung a bit wide. I was driving a conversion van to approach the spot, when the car I watched enter the driveway, acknowledged my blinker, pointed at me, and laughed as they swooped into the spot, nearly tapping the bumper of the vehicle in the spot directly across from him. Important later. I mentioned to this smug entitled jerk that I was obviously waiting for this spot, even had my blinker on, and that he should move. I know, futile, but I figured being nice would be the right approach. I was in my early 20s. I'll only be a minute, was his smug response. All right. You want to play games, sir? Games we shall play. I told my grandmother to go ahead and go into the post office to do her business, after confirming that we had nowhere else we needed to go in a timely manner. A plan formulating as I'm ushering her out of the vehicle so I could exact my revenge. Two things of note: a conversion van is capable of getting insanely close to other objects, and still is able to allow a person to climb in or out, and the vehicle to the right of this jerk was shorter than his, which left extra room for my grandmother to get back in. While my grandmother was in the post office, I rocked the conversion van as close as I possibly could to his bumper without touching anything, while leaving just enough room for my grandmother to get back in through the passenger door. Turns out, his business took longer than hers, so I was able to get even closer to his bumper, ultimately blocking him in, with as close as he was to the car across from him, and as close as I opted to park my vehicle. He had no moves he could make without hitting other vehicles, whereas I was able to move freely to allow the other vehicle to leave, while still keeping jerk pinned in place. What made it better was my grandmother picked up a free calendar from the post office, and we used that as a means to occupy our time and attention. After coming out and seeing what I had done, he started yelling. I don't really remember exactly what was said, but he was fuming. We took this opportunity to smile and wave at him, and my grandmother, catching on to what was happening and with the window cracked, loudly announced that she got a new calendar, and the pictures were breathtaking and that I needed to see them as she pushes the calendar into my field of view and loudly describing what the pictures were of, reading the captions, discussing the various shades of the many colors on each and every picture. When she was done with that, she felt obligated to obnoxiously discuss the days of the month the holidays landed on for that year, the lunar cycles, birthdays, and so on. 25 minutes rolls by at this rate. Who would have thought calendars were so interesting? And jerk gets out of his car, yelling profanities at such a rate that I swear he was about to pass out. He approached my window and aggressively asked me why I'm taking so long. I responded with, well, had you allowed me the spot I patiently waited for, I wouldn't be blocking you in right now, and drove off. Act like an a-hole, be treated like an a-hole. That's simple. The next one is titled, Aggressive Driver Gets a Ticket. Because of me. 15 years ago. Driving from Paris to Brussels. French highways are sprinkled with fixed-speed radars. This is a two-lane section of the highway and I'm using the left lane, overtaking a car that is going a bit slower than the speed limit, which is 130 km per hour, or 80 miles per hour. I'm right at 130 km per hour. I see a tiny spot growing rapidly in my rear view mirror. It quickly turns into a car tailgating me and flashing their lights at me. The car I'm trying to shift is probably doing 125, so this is taking a bit of time. I have two options: A, I keep on driving and I pull over to the right when I'm done overtaking. Not going over 130 km per hour. B, accelerate so angry MF can hurry through. At B, risk of getting a speeding ticket. The guy behind me, let's be sexist and assume it was a dude, gets even closer and keeps on flashing his headlights. I knew this highway really well. Was doing this trip at least once a month. And I knew radar was coming up soon. So I eased up on the throttle and took my time before pulling over to the right. Just as I did, the guy behind me angrily floors his car. A split second later, I see a flash of light. My petty revenge had worked. Perfect timing. The next one is titled, The Late Customer. I work in quite a busy industry. We tend to see customers in rapid appointments, and as you can imagine, if there is a delay on either the customer's or our end, it can put quite a strain on the service overall. Most of the time things run a little late, but it works out okay overall. On one particular day, things were particularly busy and things were already behind schedule when a customer didn't turn up to their given appointment time. This was not altogether unusual, and thinking nothing of it, we continued with seeing the subsequent customer. As it happens, they finally did turn up, but some 30 minutes after their allocated time. At this point I was already behind and so passed a message out to reception to say that I would not be able to see them. The customer wasn't having this and was hugely unimpressed, complaining to the point where my boss became involved and asked me to see them, just to prevent any further escalation of her complaint. I relented and asked her to return to the waiting room, where I told her I would see her as soon as I possibly could. She sat down with a very smug look on her face. I then proceeded to see every single one of my other customers before attending to her as my last customer of the day. Her furious purple face as she walked through the door made me very happy. The next one is titled, Steal Our Phones While We're Surfing. Have fun getting arrested after we hunt you down. So this happened like 5 years back. Basically my buddy and I got super into surfing in high school and we would go pretty much every day. His mum, rest in peace, would usually drop us off. We would wrap our phones in our shirts, bury them in the sand a bit, and place our towels on top. This was the everyday routine. So one day we go surfing in this sketchy area. Not so sketchy that we shouldn't have been surfing there, but it would have been way smarter to not bring our phones. Anyway, we kinda ducked up, brought our phones, went surfing, and when we got back to shore, the phones were gone. We freaked out for a little while, and then asked some people nearby if they saw anything. They said no, but they were nice enough to let us check Find My iPhone as well as call his mum to come pick us up. By the time we checked Find My iPhone, the phones were already about 5 miles away. We called his mum, told her what happened, and expected to just go home sad, but no. His mum was seriously a legend. Once she picked us up, she had us quickly log into Find My iPhone on her phone and the pursuit began. We literally drove for maybe 2 hours out of the way until we finally started getting near the guy. The thing is, no matter how close we got, the phone was always on the move. Plus it's not the most accurate tracker in the world, so it's only within like 500 feet of the phone, so the chase went on forever and we had no idea what car we were following. I don't remember all of the details perfectly, but at some point during the chase, her phone died so she hauled ass off the freeway, ran like 2 lights and made an illegal U-turn. None of this was that dangerous, like nobody was there, but it was still pretty badass, and quickly pulled up at a 7-Eleven where we bought a car phone charger. The chase continued. We followed the Find My iPhone tracker for maybe 2 or 3 hours total until finally the POS stopped. We pulled up where we assumed was the right stop and it was some random taco shop. We went inside, looked around, but only a couple people were in there and they all looked like they were with family, so we didn't think it was any of them. That's when we went outside and saw some guy sitting at the bus stop with a large duffel bag. We immediately assumed it was him. He looked pretty sketch, so we called the local police and they said they would send a car to our spot. The funniest part of all of this was that the cop was full on like, "Don't approach the guy, just wait," but my buddy's mum, being the goofy person she was, came up with seriously the dumbest plan, but we all loved it at the moment so we went with it. What she did was she casually walked up to the guy and was like, "Hey, I lost my phone, do you know what time it is?" It was seriously the funniest crap ever. My buddy and I couldn't help but start cracking up. Anyway, the guy was all hostile and just said no, so she came back to the car and we just waited, laughing about what just happened. From that point on, as the guy was waiting for the next bus, he kept looking back at us every couple seconds. It was kinda scary but overall really funny. A few minutes later, a cop car passed by on the opposite side of the road, turned on its lights, and made a quick U-turn driving towards the guy. He got up and frickin' bolted as fast as he could across the street. The cop was in a car though. He caught him immediately. He handcuffed the guy, brought him over to us, and the cop was like, "Do you have these kids' phones?" The guy, acting innocent and upset, was like, "No. Why would I steal these kids' phones?" The cop then opened his duffel bag and wouldn't you know it, out pops our phones. The guy starts rambling that he bought the phones off some random guy and the cop jokingly said something like, "That's some bad luck. Maybe don't buy phones from some guy at the beach." He ended up getting arrested and we got our phones back after a 3-hour chase. The next one is titled, "Break My Phone. I'll Swipe Your Bag." One winter, I was taking the train home after a day of doing crap at uni. Mostly, just gaming with my friends. I own a pretty neat Allview X2 Soul Style Plus for some time. The thing held on for a long time. It was pattern locked, as I am bad with words and numbers, but good with shapes. I was on my phone browsing Pinterest, next to an entitled mother M and her entitled kid EK, bad move 1, when EK comes and asks, more like demands, to let him play on my phone. Feeling like a smart ass, I locked the phone and gave it to EK, bad move 2. After about 2 minutes, EK tells M he can't unlock the phone. Being like any other M, she demanded to unlock her child's phone. I say no, ask for my phone back, and she proceeds to smash it to the ground, being all smug about it. Now, it was an old phone. I wanted to replace it either way and backed up everything on an SD card and left it at home. Mostly, I used it for the internet. I was quiet. Just shrugged. Because I wanted revenge. So, I didn't scream or anything. I just picked up the phone and removed the SIM card, while M and EK moved further away. At my stop, the train began to get crowded. I made my way to the exit, making sure I pass M and snatched her purse while she wasn't looking. The purse wasn't on her arm, it was on the seat beside her. Stupid woman. She was still telling her kid about how much of an a-hole I was, making it easy to pick it up without her noticing. The original plan was to smack her head and then move out quickly. It might sound stupid, but I've done it before, and got away with it. I am easy to miss. I had my jacket on, and many people had their hoods up, so it was easy to blend in. Before the train left, I knocked on the window next to M and held up her purse. The look she gave was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. She tried to stop the train, but the emergency stop was either broken or non-existent old train, and the crowd made it impossible to move around. I moved to a place with no cameras around and searched through her purse. Got close to €400, money was in different currency, and a Samsung, I can't remember what Samsung, an S something maybe? I tossed the purse in a trash bin outside and went to McDonald's and got a Happy Meal even though I had a full beard. I didn't regret anything. She broke my stuff, I got it back, plus interest. If someone criticizes me for it, duck you, I don't care. I also wore gloves, so no fingerprints. The next one is titled, Bacon is the Name of the Game. I'm currently extremely angry at one of my bosses at work, so to calm down I thought I would tell this story to all of you lovely people. Hopefully it makes a few of you laugh at the very least. Though to make a few things clear at the start. I myself am pagan, however I have always done my best to be respectful of other people's beliefs and religions, though this story might not come off like that. Everyone I mention in this story beside myself is Muslim, and besides one they are all amazing people who taught me hundreds of things and many of whom I still call friends to this day. All names are fake, of course. Forever and a day ago I worked at a hookah bar lounge that was owned by a man named Jafar. Jafar was a horrible boss and in many ways an awful person. Jafar loved to sit at the very front of the store with a group of his friends playing cards and drinking copious amounts of tea. This group of people would often grow so large any other customer who wanted to come in had to scoot past them very carefully so not to get burned by hot coals. Jafar made sure his group was catered to hand and foot before any other customer by snapping his fingers and demanding the attention of his workers. However, Jafar never seemed to charge this group the complete amount on their tabs. Instead he pushed the charges onto other customers, specifically customers that had never been there before. Though all of that doesn't sound good, it certainly is not terrible, but that was all I was aware of for the longest time, because even though Jafar was a chucklehead, the manager, Jordan, was an outstanding human. Jordan would rush from one task to another, completing it thoroughly and with a huge smile. Jordan would also take care of Jafar's group and tell both myself and Ari, the other worker, to come to him if the group said or did anything foul to us. Jordan was a lifesaver, but then came the day he left. Ari nor I learned that Jordan had left the hookah bar lounge until we came in for work one night and Jafar was standing in the back wide-eyed and unsure of how to open his own business. Thankfully Jordan had trained Ari and me extremely well, so tactfully we pushed Jafar out of the back room and got started. Occasionally Jafar would wander into the back and bark orders at Ari and I, which admittedly we ignored. As the days passed, Jafar's true colors came to complete light. For the sake of brevity, here's a short list of things Jafar began to do. Under Jordan, Ari and I were given the cash and credit card tips any customers left. Suddenly no customers left tips ever. Jafar told Ari and I that he was going through a rough patch and cut out $8 per hour wage to $7.25 per hour and then cut our hours so only himself and one of us would be working at the same time. The group I mentioned above was now allowed to wander into the back room whenever they wanted and make or take whatever they wanted, often getting in Ari or I's way. If Ari or I would bring food or order food be delivered to us and we left in unattended, Jafar or one of his group would eat it. As soon as things truly started to go downhill, Ari and I made a pact that we would both start looking for new jobs and we would turn in our 2-week notices the same day, which in the end we did, but before then Jafar needed to meet my petty side. I got angry that my food was disappearing on the regular. Bacon became my best friend. The first day I came in with a bacon, chicken, cheese casserole. When Jafar told me it smelled good, I just nodded. Like usual, it disappeared. The next day and the day after and the following week I kept cooking and it kept disappearing. Finally, when Ari told me he had found another job and we put in our 2-week notices, I ordered a pepperoni pizza. When Jafar discovered I had ordered pepperoni, he screamed at me that I was being disrespectful. I simply smiled and said, but bacon and pepperoni make everything taste better. I've made sure it was in everything I've made for months. The last 2 weeks I worked there, my food didn't disappear once, nor did Jafar more than glance at me. The next on is titled, Yes, I'm Petty. I have new neighbors. Besides being extremely noisy, I've also noticed random garbage thrown into my backyard. This included box tape, cigarette butts, water bottles and other plastic disposables. Basically stuff that they're too lazy to put into a rubbish bin. Me being petty, every time they threw trash over, I would pick it up and shove it through one of their windows that's within arm's reach from my backyard. The landlord illegally built right up to property line. My brother thinks I should have spoken to them about it. I don't think so. I shouldn't have to tell grown adults not to throw garbage into a neighbor's yard. I think they got the picture. Haven't seen any garbage in my yard for a few days. The last one is titled, Spies and Lies. There's an anti-alcohol organization called the Women's Christian Temperance Union. When I was in college, the local chapter had a speech contest, with cash prizes. Being a shameless hypocrite when there's cash on the line, I entered and won. The prize was equal to about a month's rent. This earned me a trip to their national convention to compete for more cash. While there, I saw a table with nobody manning it and boxes of their fancy stationery, embossed letterhead and envelopes. I stole some. About a dozen years later, I'm dating a woman with a gigantic drinking problem. She's get wasted and pull embarrassing stunts in public, mostly involving flashing people. She suddenly started getting anonymous letters from the Women's Christian Temperance Union saying they were watching her and they were very concerned by what they were seeing. Each letter would detail a couple of incidents. She started getting very paranoid when we were out in bars, trying to figure out who was spying on her. Eventually we broke up and stayed friends for a few years, and eventually she quit drinking. And no, I never did tell her. Thanks for listening.